Welcome back to Builds Not Projects. This week's video, we're back on the 100 horsepower drift trike. Got pipes all welded up the other night after about 4 hours worth of TIG welding. And then tonight we're going to be working on getting foot pegs built. So I'm going to bend some bars, kind of run them out from the bottom somewhere forward, and then kind of just out and have a little catch for them. So that way you've got a place to put your feet. So we'll be getting those built and then kind of going from there.
So pro tip, make sure to mark the middle of your tube before you do two bends in it and try to make them identical pieces. It gets a little bit harder if you don't do that.
Yeah. Working on building these foot peg things. What I like to do is I like to kind of just get a rough estimate of the angle of the notch. So I'll kind of just hold the tube where I want it, and then I'll just take a Sharpie, draw a line kind of same angle as the tube it's gonna be butting up against, and then that way I can take it over and just line it up with the notcher and get it pretty close the first time. Got these tubes made for the foot peg-ish kind of things. Not really sure what you would call them. I guess foot pegs. They're tacked on. Gonna go ahead and get this thing set back up on the table so I can weld them the rest of the way, because it's kind of hard to TIG weld on the ground. So in light of getting this large package in such a small frame, going to remove the oil injection pump and just run premix. So I'm going to go ahead and get started pulling that off, and then I'll build a little block off plate for that.
You are my sunlight.
So once you get the oil pump off of there, you can pull the oil pump drive gear out. It just runs off of a little worm gear on the crankshaft, so you can just pop it out, saves a little extra weight. So block off plates I'll put on. I'm going to have to get some little vacuum caps or a T or something to cap all of these off, the little oil feed lines. Next up, mount the little CDI box. So I think I'm going to mount it up underneath in here, and I'll just drill and tap a couple holes into that motor mount plate because there's plenty of room in between where that would be getting mounted and the bolts for the motor. So I'll go ahead and get those drilled and tapped out, and that way we're going to get that thing mounted. But first, going to cut this nasty bar off that I had on here just to help hold all the frame rails in place. And since it's kind of served its purpose and it's done doing its purpose because everything's welded up now, I can go ahead and chop it off and then figure out what I'm going to end up doing with these caps later on. Alright, so after a bit of a mishap with the tap, the motor got yanked out of there. Apparently the tap was made of glass. I don't know why it even broke, because it wasn't tight, but it broke, so I don't have another one, so I just drilled them through, weld a little nut on the top there to mount that CDI box underneath, and then I'm mounting the fuel pump. I'm going to just mount it right in here, I think. Would be a good spot for it, because you got vacuum pulse line that goes over to the side of the motor, and then these three just feed carbs, so you can easily route them up, and then the tank inlet is there, so I'll be able to run that to the front when I build the tank. Got the little choke bracket built and installed, and then may have broke the choke lever off of it. So ordered a choke kit for it so I can replace the insides of it, and we'll have a choke next week sometime once we get the part. So the other night we went through, made a big list of stuff that needed to get done. Today we've got fuel pump, CDI box mount done, and choke cable mount. Next up on the list of stuff to do, I think, is going to be the pole starter, so we're going to go ahead and try to get that thing fixed up. I cut the rope when I was taking it out, and it may have slipped out of my hand before I could get it retied back in the handle, so I got to pull that off and then rewind it and attach the handle back to it, and then I can put it back on, so that way we kind of have an idea where that needs to be, and it's kind of necessary to start it. So pole starter's hooked back up, basically just popped it off, rewound it again to get spring tension back on it, ran the rope through, tied it back in a knot, so there's a handle on there again. And then put the radiator back on, so that way I can figure out where to mount this overflow for the radiator. I think I'm going to put it right in here, because there will still be room for the lower hose and everything. There's plenty of clearance there, so I think that's going to be a good spot for it. Well, I pulled this 14-2 sprocket off from up here. I've got a 10, an 11, and a 12 to decide from. So there's a 24-2 sprocket on the bottom still. I do have a 28 and a 30, but I'm going to leave that one on there for now. And this will still get me, the 12 would get me 2-to-1, and then I could go even lower than that. I'm going to try to figure out which one of these three will work with a chain to at least be able to kind of test drive it once we get it kind of figured out. And that way we can kind of see how the gearing is before I decide what sprocket I want on the bottom. So it looks like the 11-2 sprocket is the ticket to get the chain nice and tight, and probably not even going to really need to run a tensioner. If I do, it'll be just kind of a little deal on this side here, so that'll kind of work for now. It kind of gives us a general idea of how that's going to go down. The fuel lines are all hooked up, as well as the pulse line to the engine, and then I put on these little pod filters that I got just to kind of see how it was all going to look and if everything was going to have enough clearance. So those things look pretty sweet, I think, being black. So I think that's it. I don't know what else to say about it. Kind of getting dark outside, and we're running out of time on the trike, but next week's video we're going to be going through. I got to pull some of the wiring harness out of this to use to be able to build the wiring harness for the trike. So we'll get a few parts out of this and get to building the wiring harness next week and maybe rig up a little fuel tank or something. And if somehow we manage to get enough stuff done, we want to try to get it fired up here soon so we can kind of see how it's going to sound with the new pipes on it. Well, stay tuned for next week. Make sure you hit the like and subscribe button if you already haven't. And thanks for watching.